And that's the power of shading, used in its truest illusionary form. Hope this helps you guys out making realistic stuff. Sometimes what you'll want to do before you lay down a camera is circle around the whole tree to find the part that is the most realistic part of the tree. And a lot of the times the most realistic part will also be a part that has a good shading. So you'll notice the dark area right here, which gives off a illusion that it is more realistic than what it may be. What I mean is, you may have noticed the circle in the thumbnail of the video. Notice that the leaves are not textured. What I mean is, sure, they don't have any lines, but there's also no extra detail added to it, whereas the trees have extra detail. I purposely did that for this video so you guys can kind of get a feel on what you should be doing. As on the side here, the tree sort of looks more realistic because the leaves look more realistic. So remember, the overall finished concept will help with your realism. Thank you so much for watching. Look up textures, not trees, textures of whatever you are going to create for your scenery, whether that be leaves or whether that be the gravel or ground or whether that be the bark on the tree. The more detail you add to it, the more you can see with your eyes to apply to your sculpture, the more realistic. So the more you keep adding stuff to it, the more realistic it's going to become over time as you mess with it. It's all a process and it can be time consuming. This is roughly a 12 to 10 minute tutorial if you're just wanting to get this overall concept. What you can do at the end also is comb your tree. What I mean is, you'll want to go to edit, right? And if you want to make it to where the tree is comb, and let's say we want the bark to go down or up, sort of like a tree does, what we'd pick is probably hatching, and then we'll just go down with it. But it's affecting everything, even the leaves. But you can do that kind of thing also. As you can see, that made it look a lot more realistic. So if you're going to make your leaves, make sure it's not a part of the bark of the sculpture. What is up, guys? Do not forget to subscribe, follow me in Dreams, follow me on Twitch. I'm Young Text on Twitch and Young Text YouTube on Dreams Ps4 and Dreams Ps4. Subscribe and check my channel playlist for individual tutorials on logic, sculpting, animation, music, and more. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I hope this helps you learn how to texture. What is up? Making realistic scenery in Dreams Ps4 is a lot easier than what you think it is. I don't want you guys to look up any freaking trees that are realistic in order to do this. Look up a texture of something. There's a texture of maybe ground at the beginning of this video. Look up stuff like that, because that's what you are actually doing. You are texturing a model. That's what you're doing. You're not trying to build a shape. You're trying to texture whatever shape that you use to create your object. So whenever you are texturing this, where we will begin is with one shape and one shape only. First, something I learned from Bob Ross. The closer you are to something, the more realistic you want it to be. But notice how it still looked realistic close up. But now we can't see those details because we were further away. This means the further something is away, the less detail we want to add to it, because it's not going to matter anyway. Whereas if we get closer up to something that has more detail, we can see the detail. We can see it. So if you're going to have something further away, do not over detail it, because it's not going to matter. We're not going to be able to see it. Another thing, like I've been saying in all my other videos, realistic things have no lines, have no lines. This means whenever we are creating realistic stuff in Dreams Ps4, we actually want it to be loose with our sculpture detail instead of solid with our sculpture detail like this. This is something that is solid with your sculpture detail. This would be something smooth, something solid. Notice how this is very loose. This is very loose. That's also giving it the illusion of shading, and you need perfect shading in order to get something realistic. And it just so happens that the looser something is, the more realistic it can look because it's shading better further or closer away or closer towards. So remember that also. Remember, you do not need your sculpture detail at max in order to get realistic scenery sculptures. You probably wouldn't need to do this with humanoid sculptures either in some areas. So let's begin. What's the actual process on making this? What was my actual process? Well, there's two ways to do it. You can either overlay it. So if we're going to overlay it, we would take it off a kaleidoscope. Then we would extend this and make it as long as the tree needs to be, right? And then we would upsize it after we place it down. We might even want to put on grid snap whenever we place it down. Before we start, I also have a finish on this that may help with the realisticness of it. And my finish is plastic. I noticed that in a lot of the 360 games, a lot of the stuff used to look very plasticky, and I guess that's the reason why. So you can mess around with the finishes also, because that could also help it look realistic. As opposed to this, which combined with the light that I have set down, I guess helps some of the exposed areas show through, making it more realistic. And there's the light. You might want to group those together. So back to our main branch for our tree. After you place it down, you might want to upsize it. And this is the overlay method. After you put it down like that, there are 3 things you might want to know. Well, you'll need to know if you're going to want to make something like that in the background, my realistic tree. First, put it on stamp mode. Second, in order to get it to loosen amount, you want to turn that up. You'll also, in some cases, want to turn on hard blend. And in some cases, you'll want this blend mode up, and you won't want this blend mode up whenever you're cutting into the tree or adding to the tree with this branch whenever you are in kaleidoscope. Sometimes it might actually help to just do this one at a time. So like if you're having trouble with it, don't use kaleidoscope mode. And also know that trees are thicker at the bottom, and then it goes up and gets skinnier. So know that also. So there is tree anatomy for you. What you can also try doing is doubling it, sort of like that, if you need to. But back to the topic at hand. What we're going to do is kaleidoscope. And remember these settings for your blend type. These are my settings for the blend type. Looseness half, hard blend, and nothing right here. And what we're going to do from here is swirl it to where it keeps on being the same as we go up. So like if we're going to start here, remember the pattern of how it's swirling, if that makes sense. So we're going to just keep following this line as we go up. And we've got our bark. Now, what you want to do now, if you want to make it super duper realistic, the more realistic you want to make it or whatever, you'll want to start making these thicker areas smaller in the proper parts. I also, like I said, you'll want to make it thicker at the bottom. So what you'll want to do is for that, turn up the blend mode. You can either add ground, which I like to do just because it just helps me. Pay more attention. And then what you want to do, take it off a kaleidoscope, probably go here, scope into the part that you want to blend, make sure it's loose, and blend this together to where it's thicker near the bottom. That's one way you can do it. It's probably not the best way. I also want to make sure. Next, guys, was I actually scoped out, went here, and I reduced the sculpture detail, because you'll notice that if it's in the red, it's actually at max sculpt detail. Doing this will make it look a whole lot better, and especially if you put it in light, you get your realistic effect. So from here, you can like mold things together. Like in the areas that have holes, you can also re-kaleidoscope, or in areas you can also move one kaleidoscope, which would move everything. That makes sense. And you can kind of make it more prominent in areas if you need to. And if you need to, you can mess with the finish. Whatever you need to mess with it or put it on. This one looks really good with the light, so. And it's all an optical illusion. And the better you get at it, the more realistic it'll start to look closer up. And with the tree branches, what you'll want to do with these, all it is, make sure you scope out of the original tree part. Then what you want to do is go into scope mode, choose either this one or this one. I like choosing this one. Choose the color that you want for the branches, or the leaves, sorry. Go here, press dots, and go here, loosen. Then these are your branches. Place one down, or you can do something like this. I like just placing one down and then cloning it around the top part of the tree until you can size it up too whenever you need to, and also do, whenever you're cloning it, you can clone it multiple times until it starts looking like that. Here you just want to clone all around the tree. Some trees won't have it everywhere. Some trees will. I think trees look better whenever you don't place them everywhere, just where it needs to be. Whereas with that one, it's like a perfect circle, but nothing's perfect in real life. So it probably would look better just to do something like this. And then you can like add your light, you know. And yeah, that's how you make this is how you make realistic trees. It's pretty simple actually. It's all texturing.
we went hard on this one. Peace out, guys. Subscribe, follow, all that great stuff. And peace.